Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Two Bi Guys. It has been a long while, hasn't it? I've been off the air for a while. I've been pretty busy doing lots of different things that I'll tell you about, but I'm very excited to get back to the podcast and to share some of these interviews with you this season. I have some amazing guests. So it's exciting to be here, and thanks for listening. So, what have I been up to since the last episode dropped a while ago? I wrote a book. As many of you know, if you listened to the last season and if you've been following along with this story, I have written a book about bisexual married men. It's specifically about bi men who are married to women. More different experiences coming soon, I hope. But this book is called Bisexual Married Men: Stories of Relationships, Acceptance, and Authenticity. And the book is both a memoir about my life and my relationship and also an oral history featuring 13 interviews with other bi guys who are married, most of whom are listeners of this show. So I want to thank everyone who participated or who even offered to participate. I still have a database of all of you guys, and I'm hoping to continue this project in some form or another. If you haven't signed up for that database and you are a bi married man, the link is in our link tree on our social media. You can still add yourself to the database just in case I do more stuff in the future. But the book features 13 interviews. I'm so excited for it to come out. It's all done. We're in the copy editing phase now. There's a few logistical things left to happen, and the book is supposed to be released on November 30th, 2023. You can pre-order it on Amazon now. I will have it available on my website soon, which I'll tell you about, and you'll be able to find it wherever books are sold. And in honor of my book, this season is book season. I am interviewing all bi authors who have some awesome new books out. And some of the people I've interviewed, you've met before. You heard them on this podcast before they wrote a book. Now they've written a book. We're going to talk about that. And then there's some people who are new to the podcast and have written some amazing books that I love. We've got Vineet Mehta and Benjamin Perry coming back to the podcast. We've got Jessica Fern, who wrote Polysecure, which is one of my favorite books. We've also got an author named Kate Mangino, who wrote a book called Equal Partners that is about relationships and gender dynamics. It's really fascinating, and more after that. So I'm very excited for this season. We'll get to the first interview with Zachary Zane, who wrote a book called Boyslut recently. It's awesome. You should check it out. We'll get to that in a minute, but first I have some more exciting news. I'm starting a Patreon for bonus material, early access, and ad-free episodes of Two Bi Guys. So I'm a member of the Writers Guild of America. I am currently on strike. Job security is up in the air, and even if the strike ends, it still is because this industry is quite unpredictable. I really love doing this podcast. I love chatting with the amazing people in the bi community and sharing it with you all. But the truth is, I've been doing it for 4 years, almost 5, and it is a lot of work. And I'm so glad that the first 5 seasons have been out there as a free resource for the bi community, available to everyone. And moving forward, the vast majority of my content will still be free to all. But if you've been enjoying Two Bi Guys and have a few bucks to spare to support my work, I would really appreciate it. And I want to make it worth your while. So if you subscribe on Patreon, you will get access to each episode as soon as I finish editing it, whether that's the night before I upload it publicly or a week before, or sometimes further in advance if I'm banking episodes, which I am right now. You will also get a completely ad-free listening experience. Many of you know I've partnered with Zencastr to do both host-read ads and also programmatic ads now. You may have noticed those recently. You will hear none of that on the Patreon, just the interviews and updates like this from me. And most importantly, you will get bonus content, whether it's 5 extra minutes or 45 extra minutes, you never know. Every episode will have at least some bonus content that you can only hear on Patreon. This episode has about 20 minutes of bonus content. So after you're done listening here, I highly recommend checking out those extra 20 minutes. They're pretty interesting. Plus, I also have some random old clips that I've saved in a folder and never posted, and they're kind of fun and random, and I will be releasing stuff like that here and there as an extra bonus to all subscribers. There will also be more stuff coming soon on the Patreon, possibly related to the book. So subscribe on my Patreon. You'll get access to everything I talked about, updates about the future, and you'll help support my work. It's only $5 and it really helps me keep all this going. So thank you. Before we begin this episode, I do unfortunately have to apologize for one thing. Due to my extended hiatus, I was a bit rusty in the recording process. I forgot to change the gain setting on my microphone when I recorded the first couple episodes, so the audio quality on my end is not ideal. Right now, it probably sounds fine, but when the interview starts, you will notice a difference. I do apologize. It's pretty bad right away because I was very animated and excited to begin the interview, but it does get better as the episode goes on, a little bit better. I hope it's not that obtrusive. The same thing unfortunately happened in my second episode, but to a much lesser degree. After that, it's fixed. I remembered to change the gain. I know what I'm doing now. Anyway, you'll notice it in this episode. I really do apologize, but I thought that my conversation with Zach was great and spontaneous and authentic, and I wanted to bring it to you, even though the audio is clipped, is what we call it. So it won't happen again. I know you'll enjoy the episode anyway. And without further ado, here is professional, bisexual, boy slut, bi slut, Zachary Zane. Hello everyone, welcome back to Two Bi Guys. It's been a while. Nice to see you all again. Well, I can't see you, but it's nice to be back. And we're back for our book review season. I took a break to write my book. We're interviewing a bunch of authors this season. I've got a whole lineup of authors, and I haven't really set a schedule yet, but I'm pretty sure this is the season premiere. If it's not, I'll edit this out. But
nice.
And also, we have our first ever repeat guest, I think, ever, who's back for a second time to record a new episode. Welcome back to the podcast, professional bisexual and mega influencer, Zachary Zane. Hello.
Well, I feel honored for returning to the podcast here, for being the only one, and I'm excited to be another bi guy on this podcast here.
Yes, there were two bi guys the last time you were here. Well, three, including you. Now it's just me, and so now it's just two of us again. There's usually two, but we still call it Two Bi Guys, and we wish Alex well. He's doing lovely work at the Trevor Project, and is just doing such important work. He doesn't have time to bullshit with us, but I'm glad we both have time to do this.
Oh, I know, yeah, absolutely.
If you haven't listened to the last episode with Zach, you should go back and do it. Just in case, Zachary Zane is the sex and relationship columnist for Men's Health. He writes Sexplain It, where he answers all your questions about masculinity, ethical non-monogamy, sexual insecurities, and the queer community, with a bit of a focus on bisexuality and fluidity. He is the co-author. Since we spoke, he has co-authored Men's Health Best Sex Ever. There's a period after each word. 200 frank, funny, and friendly answers about getting it on. His work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Playboy, Vice, GQ, Rolling Stone, many, many more. I could list it forever. And his new book is out now. By the time you hear this, it's been out for a few months. Maybe you've read it already. I hope you've read it already. It's called Boyslut, a memoir and manifesto. I just binged it this week. I couldn't space it out. I had to binge it.
I love that. I love hearing that.
And I loved it. Everyone should buy a copy. It's great. It's a lot of stuff we talk about here and then some. And half the time, maybe more than half the time, I felt like I was reading about my life, like you were writing about me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many people will feel that way. So it's good to have you. Welcome back. I have topics I want to discuss. I don't have as many questions like last time, but I will start with the question, which is, tell us about life since 2020 when we last spoke, and how did this book come about, and all your writing for Men's Health. What's been going on since we last spoke?
Yeah, wow, it's been a moment. It has been a moment. So yeah, COVID happened. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I'm not sure if your listeners are. No.
What was that?
Yeah, what was that? but that actually allowed me and gave me time to write the book Boyslut. I was sitting at home and I was doing my Zoom Pilates and jacking off 5,000 times a day until my dick was raw. And then I'm like, all right, well, let's finish this book we've been talking about and trying to work on forever. Let's do that. So it did give me an opportunity to just kind of sit home and write because literally there was nothing else I could do. Um, and that Boy Slut has really been the focus for the last like 3 years of my life. And I'm so excited that it's out now. And yeah, it's been getting really good
Yeah.
feedback, and especially from it makes sense, especially from bisexual, pansexual, queer, fluid, polyamorous, kinky people. Like this book is for everyone. I really think anyone can learn about how to overcome sexual shame, but it really is it's my love letter to the bi community in a sense.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I went through a similar evolution with my book, which is about bisexual married men, and it's a little bit memoir like yours, but it's mostly oral history of other bi men who are married to women. And I also wouldn't have probably done it without the pandemic because it was like summer 2020. I had like nothing to do besides this podcast,
Yeah.
and like I just decided there's all these guys out there that are listening and nobody's talking about that experience, and let me interview them. And then it took like a year or two to figure out that this was a book, and then to get the book deal, and then actually writing the book is hard. Like that was hard. That was harder than I thought, but it's a long, long process.
I have bad news for you. The writing the book is not the hardest part at all.
Oh God.
Or at least it wasn't for me. Sorry, I can't speak for your experience. The anxiety that comes afterwards, the
Oh
publicity, the going out. I think it sounds like our books are definitely a little bit different, but because I share so much about myself in this book, and I think there's this misconception for me where because I also have like a digital zine called Boyslut, which is either great branding or
yes.
confusing. But the digital zine is like nonfiction erotica, and I write really raunchy, kinky sex stories that are like over the top, not over the top, they're just intense and they're amazing. And because I do this, people are like, "Oh, Zach, you're so open about everything in your life." And I'm like, "Well, no, I'm open sexually." And I like me talking about my hairy asshole getting DP'd isn't actually that vulnerable for the way that it is for other people.
Yeah.
Versus in this book, I talk about my relationship, with my family. I talk about past partners where I treated them poorly. Obviously that was not my intent. It was not malicious, but I hurt people along the way while I was closeted, while I was confused, when I didn't know how to communicate my feelings, and kind of reliving that. And so this is just really personal, and I have
Mm,
some, opinions that I didn't even think were controversial, but apparently they are. uh,
interesting.
and getting some feedback for that. And of course, people read things through their own lens. That has been very clear to me. Where I sometimes feel like they read a completely different book. Where I'm like, how
Oh,
was that your takeaway from what I said? That's the exact opposite of what I said. I have sentences that shows that that's the exact opposite of what I said. But really, people read it through their own lens,
hmm,
and that can just be a challenging thing to overcome. So that's been very challenging for me. And I say this knowing that the vast majority of the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. And that's such an incredible feeling because I didn't fucking know. I don't know. Obviously your editor tells it's good, and the people who've read it are like it's great. But getting these pretty much daily now, I get emails or messages being like, "This book changed my life. I feel so much less alone. This mirrored my experience. I'm able to embrace my kinks." Or even if it's not that deep, it's given me a lot to think about. It's given me a lot to reflect on my life, and I think I want to take my life in a different journey. I don't even know exactly what that journey is yet, but you've opened my eyes to new things. And so that is incredible. That is an absolutely incredible feeling, and that has been
mm.
the best part of writing this book.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, I have so many questions to ask. I want to hear about this controversial stuff because I it didn't strike me.
Well, yeah,
but I
right.
get it. But also, I forgot to mention your the newsletter or Substack. Is it on Substack, Boyslut? Where
Yeah,
can
it's on
people find
Substack.
it? Okay, I've read a bunch of it. It's awesome. It's so funny and also like kinky and cool and wild. And you've got great contributors doing stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not just me, which is cool. The writers from across the globe contributing.
Yeah, and it's great. And I have to admit, having read some of that, I expected the book to be more of that, and there's some of that, but actually you're right. It's much more personal outside of the bedroom for you, and it's all about the how you developed this bi identity and how you confronted so much shame that
Yeah.
I also had, and how family, even a very progressive queer accepting family can and other culture can like guide
Fuck
you
you
in ways
up.
that are not
Yeah.
great, yeah, and fuck you up. So I want to talk about all that stuff and the shame, but okay, but you mentioned it. So what's been the most controversial stuff? What have people reacted to in ways that are unexpected?
It's and really no queer man has reacted. I mean, it's really the straight people who are
Okay.
taking an issue, with this, which makes sense. But one thing that was more controversial that I didn't necessarily realize would be is I talk about sexual autonomy and being allowed to have decide on the level of sexual risk that you would like to take.
Mm,
Um, and I talk about this in regards to like wearing condoms. Now, if you are a queer man in New York City, Los Angeles, New York, you will notice that no one fucking wears condoms for grinder hookups, for sniffy hookups, for anything. The norm is not to do it. Since kind of the age of PrEP, we're not worried about getting HIV the same way. As for the other STIs, they are treatable. Syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, you get treated, you're okay, and you're okay accepting that level of risk. And clearly, your partner's okay accepting that level of risk. And I think it's very important for sexual autonomy to be able to do this. And I kind of explain how as a society, we kind of impose almost somewhat arbitrarily at times what the level of sexual risk is that you're allowed to take. And here's what I mean. You have very few doctors being like, you should be wearing condoms during oral sex. Because they just know that's so unrealistic, so they don't push it. Like, I've never had a doctor say that to me. And yet you can get oral gonorrhea. You can get oral chlamydia. Fun fact, I've had both because I love sucking dick. And it's just like, yeah, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop sucking dick. This is something that brings me joy. I want to do it. I'm knowingly accepting the risk that I can get an STI while doing this. And me explaining that, like, oh, we should be allowed to accept the risks for not wearing condoms. Uh, I didn't think that was going to blow up people's spot. I make it very clear. I'm like, if you want to wear, you absolutely should wear condoms. This is your choice. But if you are getting tested often, you're honest with your partners about it. Because honestly, like so many people lie about their statuses, about the last time they got tested. People are very manipulative and coercive trying to not wear condoms. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that fuck boy who's like, I can't come if I wear a condom. So like, I'm gonna like, please let me not wear. It's like, no, you respect people's boundaries. Um, and one thing I did is I compared kind of sexual autonomy and condom use to a common philosophy in kink and BDSM culture called RAC, which
mhm.
is risk aware consensual kink. Um, and what that means is you kind of knowingly accept certain risks while having certain like intense BDSM acts. And of course, you still do your best to mitigate the risks. So, like if you're getting tied up, you have a pair of safety shears nearby, so that way you can cut them loose very quickly in case they're losing circulation. You have safe words. If you're using choking, you have a safety action. Often it is like tapping someone out. If this person's getting tied up and you're doing choking, often what they have is you hold something in your hand like a squeaky toy, and if you drop the ball, then you know that person has passed out and you have to stop. So there's a lot of precautions that you take, but you still take these risks, and you're allowed to take these risks. But what is RAC is contingent upon is education and information. You cannot take these risks unless if you have all the information possible. Um, And that means, sexual health information. You have to trust that your partners are being honest to you and they're not lying to you. Um, and like, and I think you should be allowed to kind of make these choices as to what you're going to take. And because sex is always risky, there's always risk involved. And that's why sex experts, and myself included, have moved away from saying safe sex to safer sex. And that's because condoms break. They're not effective in protecting against HSV, herpes, and also syphilis, which are skin to skin contact. They're not 100% effective in preventing pregnancies. There's always a risk that you take. There's always an emotional risk that you take. And I would argue that the emotional risks I've taken during sex and my heartbreak is a lot worse than the times I've gotten drip from my dick and then I go in and get antibiotics and I'm fine 24 hours later.
Right.
Um,
Mental health is part of your overall health, and we sometimes minimize it as like something you can get over, but it's yeah, mental health
and
matters too.
and so I explain this. I think some straight people were kind of shocked to learn that like queer men don't wear condoms the way that they used to, and they don't really wear them for sexual encounters. Of course, I'm not trying to generalize. There are plenty of queer men that still do, but not as many. And the norm is not to, and I can say that. And it was like sometimes people like would be writing like Zach's reckless cavalier anti condom use, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like that's not at all what I'm advocating for. And part of this chapter is really discussing how STIs are shaming. As the point of STIs is to shame people. It is slut shaming people. The history of it is extremely racist and xenophobic. And if you think of AIDS is a great example where it was considered the gay disease, and this is what you get for being gay. Or it was also considered like a black or Haitian disease, and it's like, oh well, it's a black people get it. So it was racism, homophobia, and that's where this STI shaming came from. So a part of this chapter is like, hey, we shouldn't be shaming people for having STIs. And in fact, if we didn't shame people for having STIs, people would be more honest. People would be more likely to get tested.
Mhm.
People would communicate more, and we'd have less STIs if we're communicating and being honest about this. And so I thought I did a decent job conveying this.
Me
Uh,
too.
uh, Perhaps I did not. Perhaps there are ways, or perhaps just people are so ingrained for condoms, 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 and I understand, and people are so not aware of queer culture. But I was just like, what?
Interesting.
And the majority of reviews I'm getting are overwhelmingly positive. And if I get a negative review, like this is it.
They
This is
mention
the
that.
reason
Yeah.
why. Uh,
Interesting.
and I'm like, fuck. I guess it was more controversial than I thought, but
Well, not to me. I mean, this part resonated with me a lot. I found the same thing, which was before I came out as bi and started having more sex with people of different genders, like I was afraid of STIs. I bought into the conventional wisdom about condoms, even though I don't
and
like
condoms are still
condoms.
great. Sorry, and you should like if you want to use condoms, you should still use condoms. They're your first line of defense against STIs. They are
Yeah,
great. And I
great.
still wear condoms with many of my partners, especially my female partners who are not in the scene.
Right.
Also, an STI for a penis is different than an STI for a vagina or vulva, and it's a lot. It's much easier to deal with penises than it is, so I understand it can affect pregnancy. Like
Yeah.
I understand all of this, but I'm just like so I don't want to make it seem like oh, I'm never doing like anyway, you can tell I'm sensitive about this because I'm like, people are fucking saying shit. I'm like,
Yeah.
did I mess up? Like, you know what I mean?
Interesting, interesting. Well, it makes sense because that's the culture we live in. I
Yeah.
mean, so many straight people and especially straight women I've met want to use a condom all the time, and like you said, you have to respect a partner's choice and respect those boundaries. And it's a very different thing to be the fuckboy who's like, I can't have sex without a condom, versus
Yeah.
like, okay, we can do that. Just so you know, like, here's what I need if we're wearing a condom for me to be like aroused and stay hard. And like,
Yeah.
that's a great conversation to have and
Yeah.
very respectful. Anyway, the first time I had anal sex ever, it was quite vigorous. And the next day I had this two little sort of pimples on my dick. And I freaked the fuck out. And I was like, oh my God, anal sex leads to disease. Why did I ever do this? I should have just been straight.
Mm.
And I talked to my doctor about it, who's a straight woman. and it wasn't a great conversation with her. It made me feel more ashamed, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And she suggested, or actually it was my therapist who suggested I see a gay male doctor who knew about this stuff. And he basically told me the philosophy that you're talking about, which is you should get on PrEP. HIV is it's not the end of the world like it once
Used to be.
was,
Yeah.
but it's something you should try to avoid. And
And
you
it's very easy to avoid
and it's
now. You know what
super
I
easy to
mean?
avoid.
Like,
You take this pill once a day, you're 99.9% guaranteed to not get HIV. And he said, and then you don't have to worry about it. And everything else is treatable. And it's,
yeah.
it's not fun to have these other things, but everything is treatable. And if you're on PrEP, you're getting tested every 3 months. So you're aware of stuff and you can head things off. And that's how I've lived since then. And it makes a lot of sense. My doctor even checks in. He'll be like, "So, would you have sex with the HIV positive person?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm on PrEP, so yeah." And he's like, "Correct." It's almost like a test. He's like,
Yeah,
"Good,
but
that's
also
the
that's
correct
actually a
answer."
hilarious doctor at this point.
He's being sensitive, but he's like testing me. And he's like, "And what about other diseases? Are you scared of those?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't want them, but I'm not scared of them."
I'm not. I'm not trying to get it. That's not the
Yeah,
goal here. I ask people about their status, like,
yeah,
and you can figure out different levels that work for you. And that, like, so I have a female partner now, and kind of our rule is I get tested every 6 weeks anyway because I am a boy slut, and that's if you go any longer than that, you're like, oh shit, how long have I had this? How many people do I need to tell? But I get tested very frequently. And kind of what we do now is after I get tested, it comes back negative. We raw dog to our heart's fucking contents for about whatever it is, usually about 3 weeks, and then at that point, I'm like, okay, like there's this gay sex party I want to go to. I'm not going to be wearing condoms there. Then we just wear condoms for the next 3 weeks. We both complain about it, but we do it. Um, like lovingly complain about it, being like, fuck, I wish we could do this. And then when I get tested again and it comes back negative, we do it. So like half the time we're wearing condoms, and that's what makes her feel safe. It's the way we do it. It's clear that she trusts me. She knows I'm not lying to her. And it's a way for her to feel comfortable and happy in having sex. And for me to feel comfortable, happy, and having sex. And if she wanted me to wear a condom every single time, of course I would too. I love her, and this is the way we'd have sex, and that's
yeah.
completely great. Or conversely, I'd have to decide whether I want to cut down my shenanigans with other people, which is
Don't do that.
yeah, don't do that. So, like, that's what works for us, and that is different than what works for other people, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm,
It's your
mm-hmm.
fucking choice with your partner's consent.
I like that compromise. That's a nice little negotiation of boundaries, and that works.
Yeah,
It's interesting though that that's the controversy, and it reminds me of something you wrote that I wanted to read, which is about sort of unlearning what society teaches you. You wrote, "Here's the thing about unlearning what society teaches you. You still live in that society. While you may be more open or, dare I say, enlightened, most people are not. So you spend your life in opposition to the majority opinion, and you have to learn how to interact with everyone else in a manner that doesn't drive you completely bonkers." And now that this relates to so many more things in your
yeah,
book about than STIs, and we'll get there in a second. But like,
yeah,
I think there's such conventional wisdom about STIs that, at least for me, was ingrained for most of my childhood, and up until like I started coming out and being surrounded by queer people who think differently. But it's hard to break out of it, and so I guess it's
yeah.
not that surprising you're getting that backlash from straight people.
Yeah, and also I just want to be like, you're 100% lying to me. You 100% have gotten drunk and not worn a condom. Like, don't you fucking pretend that you've been 100% perfect. Like, I don't fucking buy it.
If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that we are hosted by Zencastr and part of the Zencastr Creator Network. And I am very happy to be partnering with them because they have made my podcasting journey so much easier and better. When we started this podcast, we recorded in person in recording studios, which were expensive, or we used other software or Zoom or other makeshift ways of recording locally, which was not very easy. Finally, in season 3, I just couldn't handle all that anymore. It was too much work. And so I searched for the solution and chose Zencaster. And I've been very, very happy with that choice. They streamline the entire process from recording to editing to uploading to distributing and to monetizing now. They record audio locally, which was extremely important to me, so that the quality is great and not filtered through an internet connection. So if you're thinking of starting your own podcast, I highly recommend Zencaster. It's super easy. You just log in using your browser. You don't need any special software, and you start recording a high quality podcast right away. Studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have the recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. True, that has happened, and we always have the recording. Even sometimes I can't see the person during it. They get blurry. When I download that video in the end, it is perfect because everything is recorded locally. And Zencaster is an all-in-one solution. If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. So go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code 2BUYGUYS, that's TWOBIGUYS, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experience I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Okay, so let's talk about, like, I mean, this is sort of related, and it's the first or second chapter of the book, which is about sexual shame. Tell us, I mean, your sexual shame also came with OCD, which is interesting. And I think, I don't know that I had it to that degree, but I had the same thing too. And I would do stuff like check the alarm clock a lot. And I also would question my sexuality over and over and not be sure. And like, and I think what was really clarifying that you wrote about was that you can't really overcome this stuff until you realize that it's okay, that these things are not bad, the thoughts you're having are not bad. And you talk about imagining people naked, and
Mhm.
your therapist helped you realize that, like, that's okay, and then that helps you overcome it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. It's so often, when we experience shame, I try to kind of get to the root of it, where it's just like, wait, why am I actually feeling this way? Is this because this is induced by religion, by my family? And essentially, I'm asking myself, is this something I actually think is wrong? Like that I should not be doing, and this is behavior that is like unacceptable. And examples of that, lying, cheating, that stuff is like, no, no, no. In my core, I believe that these things are things I shouldn't be doing. Or is this society trying to tell me this is wrong? And like, honestly, society shames us in various different ways because it's a way for people to maintain power. You know what I mean? Like we slut shame women to keep women tethered to men, to keep, to create and instill the patriarchy, to keep them lower. The church uses it in a way to attack gay and queer people, to shame them, and to, again, maintain and sustain power. So often I like to think like, who or what is trying to shame me? Whose voice am I hearing this in? Is this my mom's voice? Is this my pastor's voice? And if you can kind of get to the really root of it and be like, this is actually not something I think is bad. I don't think this is something that should be bad. It's kind of easier to say fuck you to it. And then, a big theme in this book that I talk about kind of is community and the my ability to find this bisexual community. And this is where you have your friends and you reach out to them. I feel like shame thrives in isolation. You know what I mean? When you kind of go through a shame spiral yourself and you're like, I'm bad, I'm terrible, I'm this, I shouldn't be doing this, and you don't talk to others about it, it just allows it to fester and grow and get worse.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to have that friend group and that community where you're like, hey, I'm reaching out. I'm kind of feeling like shit about this. What do you guys think? And they'll be like, no, you have nothing to feel bad about. This is whatever it is. You don't need to feel shame. So, really Yeah, like building that community, having people you can reach out to so you don't have to experience and kind of go through this all alone.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And also, you wrote something that really resonated with me as someone who also talks about the sex I'm having quite a bit, especially since coming out, which is you wrote, while you have a lot of sex, you write about that in the book. You wrote, while having sex with everyone is great, let me tell you what's even better, talking about sex with everyone. And I think that's so important because it's like, there's a big spectrum of sexuality, and not everyone wants to have sex all the time with every gender and be poly and whatever. But the real challenge, I think, is to be able to talk about this stuff no matter where you fall on the spectrum. And I have a lot of like straight married friends, and they can do what they want and they can be happy having monogamous missionary sex, but some of them are still tied up talking about it. And I think like that's a hard hurdle, is to just get comfortable talking about it. What do you think?
We have more trouble talking about sex than actually having sex,
Yeah.
like as a nation. And and I've made this clear in your book. My goal is not for everyone to sleep with 10,000 people and to take loads in a sauna every single day of the week. If you want to, I do want you to embrace that, and I love
Yeah.
that for you. But this book is for people who are vanilla, people who are asexual, people who are demisexual, fluid, queer. It's owning your relationship with sex, however that may look.
Yeah.
And like in it, like the shame you feel is kind of contingent upon the society or the culture that you're in. And what I mean by that is like if you are obviously the majority of the world and you're in a religious community is like slut shaming. That's the common one. But I get messages for like sex plain at Men's Health being like, I feel like I'm not nearly sexual enough. I'm too prude. My boyfriend is saying I'm being like ridiculous because I don't want to open up our relationship. And it's 2023, and every gay guy or bi guy in New York has an open relationship. And the fact that I want to wear condoms when everyone else does. And I'm like, first of all, your boyfriend's an asshole. Like they need to respect your relationship with sex. But in that situation, it's actually the prude shaming, the condom shaming is what the issue is. So I want people to be able to talk about what their sex is and to own their desires. And one thing I make clear in this book is and I have a section about this too, where I call it a peg for every hole, which we don't have to get into the kinks too much unless we want to. It gets fucking raunchy.
We can.
Um, but the whole point of a peg for every hole, not just a joke on pegging, but the thing is, no matter what your kink is, no matter what your relationship is with sex, whether you want to have it all the time, never have it, only have it with a certain type of person, only after an emotional connection, whatever the fuck it is, you can find someone.
Mhm.
Like what one of the most beautiful things I learned about myself over the years being a writer is that I am not special. My experiences are not special. My desires are not special. And by this, I mean there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have the same exact sexual desires and kinks. And that's very liberating to realize that I am not alone and
Mhm.
that we live in this era where through Field and FetLife or Scruff or Sniffies, whatever the fuck, like you can actually more easily connect with people in a way that we haven't been able to. It's easier to find people that share your kinks, your sexual desires than ever before.
Mhm.
And that's incredible. Like the fact that we're able to do this and we can do so relatively safely from the anonymity of our own home, like on FetLife and just finding other people of similar kinks. Like
Yeah.
we're really lucky because 100 years from now, if you had a fucking crazy kink, you got to like tell one person at a bar and pray to God they're into it. Like now it's a lot easier. So really, like I see the book as like a choose your own journey type
Yeah.
thing, and really just like a owning whatever your experience, whatever your relationship orientation is, sexual orientation, relationship with sex is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even things that are very, very niche now, you can find other people, and often find other people who live near you and actually explore kind of almost anything. That
Truly.
it kind of brings me to something I want to talk about, which is like sort of a bi thing, but expanding beyond that, which is that when I was first coming out and realizing I was bi, like I thought that a lot of it had to do with gender, and that a lot of my shame had to do with gender, and that once I accepted my attractions to multiple genders, that like everything would kind of fall into place and it would all make sense. And it was transformational, but then it also opened up all these other doors to other things about sex and relationships and intimacy that have nothing to do with gender. So like kinks and fetishes and like things that turn you on that are different from everything else. You also wrote in the book a lot about like dom sub dynamics,
Mhm.
which are in heteronormative culture often tied to gender, but are actually not really inherent to gender. Anyone could be a dom, anyone could be a sub, regardless of your gender. And then you also wrote about other things like that you might need in a sexual situation to turn you on, like lube or toys or other practical aids,
Yeah,
music
of
or
course.
lighting. So, did you feel like it was all about gender at a certain point, and then it opened up in the same way, or
Yeah,
did you learn about it differently?
exactly. I think because kind of the first and foremost, I had to be like, who the fuck do I want to fuck? You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like, who do I want to fuck? Who do I want to date? Who do I want to have a romantic relationship with? And when I'm second guessing every hookup, being like, do I like this? Am I into this? Does this make me gay? Or am I straight? Am I bi? Like, that
right.
was almost like, Maslow's, what's his name, hierarchy of needs.
Yeah,
Like the first one is being like, who is it that I want, that I am attracted to?
yeah,
And then once that happens, and you're like, oh, for me, it was everybody. You know what I mean? For me, the answer was D, all the above. But like once that happened, I was like, okay, now I kind of have more space in my brain to be like, okay, so beyond gender, what's next? What aids turned me on? I did not start bottoming till a while after I came out. You know what I mean? And now I'm a fucking
same.
black hole at this point. You know what I mean? But like it's and now I love it. And easy if I'm having trouble coming, you just kind of shove a dildo up there and do that, and I'll shoot like a geyser. You know what I mean? Like
I,
so it's like that was another thing that I had to explore and figure out those sexual desires. Obviously, there are a million other sexual kinks and stuff that I'm into as well, and now I've been able to explore them. And I think there's a beauty to being bisexual. I think there are many beauties to being bisexual, but one, like when you are you're already now like considered alternative or queer or on the outskirts of it, and you're no longer bound by like heteronormative scripts kind of the same way. So it allows you to be like, well, people are judging me for being bi, might as well get fucking weird with it too. You know what I mean? But you don't
right.
feel, I feel like sometimes straight people, they're so locked into that box versus bi people are like, well, we weren't allowed into that box. So
Yeah,
as queer people, we're going to create our own fucking boxes. So it actually, I think, allowed me to explore more in a different way versus if I was straight, it actually might have been more challenging to explore those kinks because there are those set and hard and fast rules, kind of the same. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry, I'm rambling, but yeah,
Right. No, I feel the same way. I also feel like if lube, like just lube, hadn't been stigmatized in my brain so much, like it would have saved me a lot of questioning and confusion. Because like there was a time before I came out where I was having trouble keep getting staying hard with women because I was so in my head like, do I really like women? I'm thinking about men. Am I gay? And before that I had no trouble, but then this period I was having trouble, and I never used lube. I just thought it like wasn't cool, or like women didn't know have it or want to use it, or they thought. And now I'm like, if I'm not feeling something, just get me some lube and start touching for 2 minutes, and I'm ready. Like I just like that sensation, and
yeah, it feels
that's
good.
yeah,
It's and even this idea, like I've pulled out lube kind of when I'm with women and because they were drier and like literally like been yelled at
yeah,
where they're like, I don't need that. I'm wet. I'm so turned on. I'm wet. I'm like, okay, okay. Like, but you can tell like just they had shame for not being, wet. And I think elements of pop culture obviously perpetuate that. Like the song WAP, which I fucking love and I quote in my book and I'm obsessed with Cardi B. But you know what I mean? But if you take that literally being like, well shit, I don't have a wet ass pussy. What's wrong with me? I feel shame. Okay, I don't want to I am wet enough. I don't want to use lube. So there are these kind of cultural things that then impact us, and in that case that's a woman feeling shame for feeling like they aren't naturally wet enough or something like that, or a man feeling like, oh, I didn't get my girl get quote unquote my girlfriend wet, and that's because did something wrong, they're not attracted to me, the sex is bad. It's like it's so quick, the fucking
Right.
spiraling out of control here.
Right, exactly. And you were also right about like pressure to perform and how that's just sort of antithetical to actually performing, and
Yeah,
how having a partner who, is patient and open to, like, you write a lot about just asking for what you need and listening to the other person and not feeling like it's necessarily about something you're not giving, or but it's just something you like and something you need, and it has nothing to do with the relationship itself.
we're so afraid to ask for anything because we take rejection so personally.
Mm,
And so when you ask for what you want and you don't take rejection as personally and you just kind of see it as information, oh, I was interested in trying this. Oh, they're not into it. Okay, I'm glad I asked. Like, that's it. That's the end of the conversation.
right.
Obviously, if they're a dick and they shame you and say that's gross, disgusting, of course you're going to internalize it. But that person's an asshole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for the most part, like, if you just take rejection or a no as information and not an attack on your self worth or who you are as a person, it makes it easier to obviously be rejected. It makes it more likely for you to ask. And when you start asking for more things, I really do think you'll be surprised at what you will get and
Yeah.
how many times people will be into it or say yes. Yeah.
Right. Many times people are into stuff that you wouldn't know, or maybe they didn't know they were into it either. But also, many times people, I've found, and I do this with other people, is like they may be indifferent to it. It may not turn them on, but they like that it turns you on. Or, I mean, for me, there's many things other partners want to do that don't turn me on, but it's cool. It doesn't turn me off. As long as it doesn't turn me
Yeah.
off, then I like that it gets you off.
That's what Dan Savage calls like GGG, right? Good game and giving. And it's this idea where it's like, I get turned on seeing how turned on my partner is. So if it's
Mhm.
something that's not like a hard no for me or even a soft no for me, but I'm like, I'm not sure if I'd be super into that. Okay, you want me to dress up as a baby? Uh, okay. Like, that doesn't, not necessarily for me, but if that's something that really turned you on and you want to do that, I'd do that with you.
Yeah.
Again, not every time. I don't want that to become the standard or the norm of sex that we have, but like, I just give that example. But like, if it doesn't, you don't necessarily need someone who's obsessed with the same exact things that you are. They just need to be open to it and willing to kind of try it out for you.
I also really liked what you wrote about anal stimulation and how life changing it was when you tried it, and
Truly,
the
truly.
orgasm is different. For me too. I mean, and you write a whole thing about what it really feels like. I actually,
Got a great chapter on butt sex, baby. I gotta have
you
that one
have
in
to.
there, of course.
You have to. I actually took a screenshot and sent it to my group of straight college friends who I bought all of them for Christmas a couple years ago, like vibrating anal toy. And very few of them have used it, or at least have admitted to me that they've used it. And I keep trying to tell them, like, you don't know what you're missing. I mean, have it, an orgasm without it is nice, but to me, that it feels like I'm sort of in control of the
Yeah.
orgasm, and that's okay. When I'm anally stimulated and having an orgasm, it's like almost out of my control in a nice way, in a way that's almost indescribable. It's like
An
your whole body.
exorcism of sorts.
Yeah, yeah,
It-
yeah.
and I want to be clear, like it takes some getting used to, and I think I didn't realize that as well. But I explained that in the book too, where it's like first time I tried it, I was drunk. Generally, don't do things drunk. You know what I mean? Like try new things drunk. I was so nervous, so I was drunk. I was clenching for dear life. I did not use enough lube. I had not cleaned out or douched, and was very worried about shitting on his dick. And I literally think I said like 5 times in having sex. I'm like, I think I'm shitting on you. And he's like, no, no, you're not. I'm like, what about that time? And he's like, no, you're not. And finally, around the fifth time, he's like, if you shit, you shit. Please stop asking. Which is just like he was like, please, like that's so fucking annoying. And I get that. That would be a killer for me too if they kept asking anxiously every 5 seconds if they were shitting. And then I went to wipe the next day. I had fissures because I was clenching. It was extremely bloody, and like I was like, okay, you know what? This isn't for me. This is. I think I can. There are so many bottoms in the world anyway. I'm doing the Lord's work by being a top because I know all the bottoms are complaining that they can't find a good top. So
There are so many bottoms on the apps. It's crazy.
it really. I also love seeing which city you're in, what the difference is. Like Los Angeles is all bottoms, which is pretty funny.
Yes.
SF I saw had more tops. New York is more verse, but it's like Brooklyn's more tops. Like Manhattan's more bottoms. It's pretty. Again, this is all conjecture. Yeah, this is not scientifically proven here. But that's been
Yeah.
my experience, and you can definitely see definitely some foreign countries, like ones that have like more homophobia. I've noticed a lot more tops, like
Yeah.
whatever it is. But yeah, I eventually kind of fell in love with bottoming through. It was like a woman who helped me fall in love with bottoming in a way where she was like, Zach, like you've been doing this all wrong. Let me teach you how to do it. And I don't want to spoil the chapter too much, but like it was like a Pandora's box. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden she did this. I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking awesome. And then I was like, all right, stick something in. Every time I'm like, let's do it. Gotta have something in the asshole here. And she's like, I just kind of want to have mission. I'm like, nope, something in the asshole. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've since mellowed out. You know what I mean? But I think it was just so exciting in the beginning too. And it still
Yeah.
is quite exciting.
It is, and you have to really, like, give in to the sensation almost. If
Oh
you
yeah.
it's similar
Can't
to
fight it,
the
baby.
right, if you fight it, it's not gonna be fun. If you really just let go and don't worry about shitting, then it's great.
Yeah.
Um, oh, yeah, I was gonna say there's this new party in New York that I haven't been to yet, but I kinda wanna try it, and I think you wrote about a similar party in your magazine online. It's called Lodestar, and there's like a bunch of bottoms, ass up, just waiting, and then the tops come in, and you sample all the holes, and then at the end choose the one to bequeath
Dude,
your load to.
it's the glass slipper of holes.
Yes, yes. And whoever gets the most loads is the lodestar. And the interesting thing is they always have enough bottoms. By the time the email goes out, they're like, "We are full of bottoms. If you're bottom, you can't come to this one. Sign up for another one. We've got enough." But they're like, "Tops, please come. We need please."
It-
They're like
it-
really trying to get the tops there.
I love gay sex parties. I think that is my takeaway from it. Fucking hilarious. And I've been to a party like that. I went to one called Meat Market, a once a month party, and that name is used by a bunch of places in Amsterdam. And it was like at this like mansion esque place. I think there were like 200 bottoms and like 30 tops. And they all, but the difference for that was they actually wore hoods so they could not see who was fucking them, and they like weren't allowed to say no. So they had like a red hood if they wanted condoms, a white hood if they didn't. Like there was, I think, two people who wanted condoms, the rest did not. And if they wanted to break, they had to raise their hand, and someone, the moderator, not moderators, but whoever, the people running the event would come, grab them with their mask, and escort them to a room where they can finally take off their mask and take a break. And I was just new to coming out when I went to this party. And I remember being like, what the fuck? Like, this is fucking crazy. My
Yeah.
God. And now I went as a top. And now I would love to go as a bottom, but apparently I might not be able to unless if I sign up quick enough. But
You
it was
got to
the
sign up for next year.
time for next year. And again, it was the same thing where they would mark you, tally you, your ass every time you got for
Wow.
that, I think it was fucked, not just a load. And then it's like the winner gets like free entry to the next one, which was like 22 euros. You know what I mean? Like the thing was like literally nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely not a real prize.
The winner gets good and truly fucked and a lot of cum.
Yeah,
Um,
you won. They're all winners when it comes down to it. Every single person there is a winner, and I stand by that.
Speaking of gay sex parties, this is a non sequitur, but I was just at one this week where the theme song to White Lotus came on.
Oh, I
And
love that that happens.
it was really, really good. It was like the right vibe. It was kind of like
Was it the techno
mysterious.
remix or was
It
it
was
that one?
it was like a techno remix.
There is like a Circuit Party White Lotus theme song remix. You
Yeah.
gotta love the gays. They are on top of their shit. Jennifer Coolidge was onto something until she was not onto something. But
Yes,
but yes.
exactly. No spoilers.
God,
No
that's funny.
spoilers.
Slight spoiler.
Okay, let's talk about porn for a minute. Let's go back a little. This is an early
Sure.
chapter in your book, but it's, porn is a gateway for so many people. Your book, Boyslut, there's the book. Buy
I haven't been promoting it enough.
it. Yeah, so it's we've talked a lot on the show about how it's this gateway. It's like a safe way to sort of explore different fantasies, and that's great. But what was kind of newish for me in the book was about this question of, can you be addicted to porn? And even if you can't, maybe it's not so binary that even if you're not addicted, porn is good in many ways, but you should examine if your relationship with porn is serving you well, actually. So how do you find that balance, or what's your take on that?
The inability to have nuance when discussing porn is mind-boggling to me. Just like everyone's like, it is the best, it is great, it allows you to explore your fantasies. The anti-porn people are completely wrong and religious and pushing it like porn is great and every aspect of it is great. And like there are even like some sex educators who kind of frame it in that way. And then you have obviously the anti-porn people who are against any form of consensual sex whatsoever, seemingly, and believe that it's all exploitation, it's all trafficking. It's like, obviously, that's not true. And I fall somewhere, obviously, in the camp of I think porn can be a great thing. However, we should analyze our relationship with it. And there's still a debate in the medical community about whether or not porn addiction, quote unquote, is real. And I'm like, who fucking cares? Like if it's having a negative impact on your life, you should reconsider your relationship with porn. If you're jacking off to the point that your dick is raw and bloodied, you need to stop. If you're jacking off at the office at work and you're doing that every single day and you're now late to work, you're missing meetings. If your wife wants to have sex with you and you don't want to have sex with her because you're jerking off all day, like like let's acknowledge that it can have a negative impact in your life. However, if it is not and you're just experiencing shame because you think porn is bad and sex is bad, well, no, fuck that. Enjoy your porn, enjoy the raunchy crazy shit that you're watching and enjoying, and go to town.
Yeah.
And of course, recognize that, real sex is not porn and porn is not sex. It is performative, it is different. Do not compare yourself to these porn stars who have 15-inch dicks, who are also taking Viagra, who can go for hours and they ed out anytime they can't get hard. You know what I mean? So just recognizing that this is fantasy. But like, this shit should not be this complicated. And the way that everyone talks about it, I'm like, there's such clear answers to this. And like, and yet people are just either like so in one camp that they're so blinded. And I'm like, no, I think porn is a beautiful and great thing. I fucking love watching porn. There have been times in my life where I felt like, I don't know if this was benefiting me. I think I was watching it so much that I didn't want to go on dates or have sex with other people. And I'm like, okay, let's take a step back. And I did. And now I have a healthy relationship with it. So just be honest with yourself, analyze it. And again, don't shame yourself for any of it. I think that's the
Right.
important thing to note. Like, there's nothing wrong with having these fantasies. There's nothing wrong with jacking off. Like, but yeah, beyond that, like, enjoy it, analyze it, have fun with it.
Right, exactly. I love porn, but but yes, you have to analyze it and your relationship with it. And in that period I was talking about where I was unsure of my sexuality and having trouble performing with anyone, I went down this internet rabbit hole about porn induced ED and this like no fap communities of like sexually frustrated men. And
Yeah, that's
yeah,
not a
tell,
good rabbit hole to go down.
I came to that conclusion eventually, but I liked what you wrote about in the book. Like, what was you also wrote about like sometimes when you're fucking a real person, you start imagining porn to stay hard, and like, how do you break out of that? I've talked about this with my therapist, so I have some answers too, but what was
Yeah.
your journey with that?
I think a lot of it was, yeah, there was a time where I was struggling getting hard and like I could only get hard or come if I was imagining porn. And I was like, you know what? Let's take a step back from porn. And but like kind of the research shows that like porn induced ED it's kind of adjacent to it. What's happening is actually what you're craving is this novelty seeking and these new things. So actually the focus should be on doing new and exciting things with your partner and focusing on your partner. The issue kind of becomes if you're actually having more stale sex or stuff that you're not enjoying with your partner, then your brain goes to porn. But if you're keeping things exciting, trying new things and novelty, your brain is less likely to go to porn. However, sometimes it's easier to just think about porn than to have that conversation with your partner, being
Mhm.
vulnerable and being like, I want to try new things. I feel like our relationship. Again, you don't have to say I feel like our sex life is stale. There are other ways around that instead of being like, hey, I would really love to try these new things with you and then list those. So the answer there is like, okay, actually, let's lean in more to our partner and try new things instead of relying on our thoughts. But sometimes I'm the same fucking way. I still have this where it's just like, like sex is good. I need that little push over the edge to come. So I imagine something nasty as fuck in my head. Great.
Mhm.
Fine. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that.
Actually, this is what my therapist said to me, which is like, there's sort of the best way I think I found to deal with it is you got to get out of your head when you're in that loop if you can. And the best way for me to do that is to focus on actual sensations in my body
I love
and
that.
not worry about, in that moment at least, not worry about pleasing my partner and not worry about performing or what they're thinking of me, which is a vicious downward spiral when you start thinking of stuff like that. But just feel your body and feel what feels good and ask for what feels
Exactly.
good. But another thing actually is it's okay to think about porn. Like the real bad part was when I would imagine porn to get hard and then tell myself that's bad that I'm doing that and then worry that my partner could tell that I'm doing that and then it doesn't work. Then it's a really
Do
bad move.
you know how many guys I've blown while they're watching porn? Like, it's much more accepted in the gay community to be like, yeah, we want that extra stimulation. It feels good. And you kind of know they're imagining someone else, but like, it's still hot because I love sucking dick and they're still enjoying it. And like,
Right.
yeah, well, like, I've definitely sucked a dozen, if not more, dicks where they're just watching porn on the screen and it's kind of hot hearing the moaning in the background. Like, that's
Right.
fine.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Once you let go of the idea that these things are bad or even should be
Yeah.
shameful, then you can kind of move past them. You're listening to the season 6 premiere of Two Bi Guys. Thanks so much for being here. The free version of this episode is almost over, but there's even more bonus content on my Patreon. There's about 20 more minutes of this episode over there. We talked about Zach's porn star boyfriend. We talked about our thoughts on starting our own OnlyFans and collaborating. We talked about sexual queerness versus cultural queerness, non-monogamy and polyamory, and Zach's journey with those things. And we also talked about the play parties that Zach has been hosting in New York, Boyslut and Bislut. So check out my Patreon. You can find a link in the show notes for this episode or in the link tree on the Two Bi Guys profile on all of our social media. Or you can head to Patreon and search for Two Bi Guys or for me, Robert Brooks Cohen. If you subscribe, you'll get more bonus content for every future episode. You'll also get early access to the episodes and a completely ad-free experience. You can listen to the whole episode there, the full episode without ads. So check it out, and thank you so much for your support and for listening to Two Bi Guys. Thank you so much for being here, Zach. Time number 2 on Two Bi Guys. It's a first. It's great to have you back and talk
Thank
about
you.
the next level of your bi journey and the book. Where can people buy the book? Where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, you can buy it everywhere books are sold. Amazon too. It's Boy Slut, one word. If you do two words, you start getting into some weird shit. Um, but yeah, you can buy it on that. You can buy it on a bookshop. local bookstores. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm more active on Instagram. I'm trying to get off Twitter for my mental health. It is a slow process, but that is Zachary Zane _. I have the digital zine, the erotica thing. If you just type in Boyslut, that will also come up. It's the Substack. And then just ZacharyZane.com if you want to reach out, ask questions, all of that good stuff.
Awesome. Check out his work. Check out the men's health column, the zine, the book, everything. Boyslut, Zachary Zane, the professional bisexual mega influencer.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming back and being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Two Bi Guys is produced and edited by me, Rob Cohen, and it was created by me and Alex Boyd. Our logo art is by Caitlin Weinman. Our music is by Ross Mincer. We are supported by the Gotham, and we are part of the Zencastr Creator Network. Use promo code 2BiGuys to get 30% off. Thanks for listening to 2 Bi Guys.